Processing shame can be a major healing step when it comes to establishing a healthier relationship with self, and in doing so, a healthier romantic relationship. Hi, my name's Eric Hammer, registered psychotherapist, and my purpose and passion is helping men who are struggling in their romantic relationships gain the self confidence and the self awareness to have the healthy romantic relationships they desire. Today, I want to talk about the idea of processing shame and how important that can be when it comes to being able to have those quality relationships, not only with other people, but also with the self. So, first of all, to begin with, what is shame? So, essentially, the idea of shame is this sense, this feeling that I'm flawed as a human being. So, essentially, this idea that everything about me is a mistake. And there's a really key distinction between shame and guilt, right? So, with guilt, the idea is we might feel bad about something we've done or an experience we've done that we're not feeling great about. Versus shame, there's sort of a totality in this idea about shame that our core, our very selves, is a mistake. And so this feeling, it's an extremely painful feeling that can happen for individuals. And then as a result of how painful, right, this experience and this feeling is of experiencing shame, people will do whatever they can to avoid it. So this is where, again, defenses can come into play. And so as a result of that, as a result of not wanting to experience this very painful feeling, people will, again, create different ways to avoid that. This might look like some form of defensiveness, right? That might come up for the individual. And in essence, they're really unable then to really know themselves at a deeper level and then be able to share themselves with somebody else in a romantic relationship. So, for example, this might look like when a man's in a relationship and their partner says, something about something not being completed. Let's say in their home, right? There's a task or something that needs to be done, and the partner, right, might comment on that, and then as a result of this comment, what the individual, what the man hears is, I'm no good or I can't do anything. So it kind of touches, right, on this feeling of shame. And when that experience takes place, immediately, right, there's this sense of defensiveness and pushback because of that touching on that feeling of shame. So, again, in order to be able to respond versus react, I think one of the key processes, right, is to be able to really understand that experience, that feeling of shame in the moment, right? And then to be able to stay present with the request and be able to respond in a way that's coming from a place of being grounded and present in the situation versus uh, reacting in a way of touching, right, on that painful wound, that feeling again of shame. Now, the idea with shame is that it's something that that feeling, it basically takes place, right, as a result of the experiences that somebody has had, and typically during somebody's childhood, right? So, as a result of these different experiences, whether it's some form of abandonment, some form of neglect, in which the individual had this internal experience of themselves not being good enough, again, being a mistake, being flawed in this totality sort of aspect. Um, this essentially sets up the individual then this sort of blueprint of having this experience, this feeling of shame. And then again, as a result of how painful this experience is, the individual will be in this state of defensiveness as a way to cope from staying away from this painful experience, this painful feeling. So I think the idea then is to really be able to, as opposed to avoiding and pushing away the feeling of shame is to, in some ways, be able to embrace that, be able to actually experience the feeling, and then to gain a greater awareness and self-knowledge about where this has come from. And then in doing so, I think the idea is that we can have an empathy, a compassion for that young self, right? That experienced that feeling of shame, and again, what it must have been like to go through an experience in which they've internalized, right, this feeling of shame, and have had to then deal with it from such a young age. So again, I think that's what we mean when it comes to this idea of processing the feeling, and then in doing so and in understanding, when then we have, let's say, an interaction with a romantic partner, we're really able to, in a very empathetic way, deal with the feeling of shame. We'll be able to, again, take care of that part, right? And then be able to stay present and respond, ideally, in the moment. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you're a man who's struggling in his romantic relationships, feel free to reach out. I do offer a free 15-minute initial consultation. And please check with a psychotherapist to make sure that this or any other information is appropriate for you. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. Take care.